So, a busy weekend. We have our quarter-final lineup in the Champions Cup. Leinster will play Saracens, Munster will play Toulon, it will be Clermont against Racing, and then Scarlets will play La Rochelle. They'll be happening March 31st, April 1st, that weekend. Munster will be away in France in the semi-final, guaranteed, against either Clermont or Racing. And then Leinster, it depends really what happens in the other quarter-final. They'll be at home if Scarlets win. Otherwise, if La Rochelle beat Scarlets, then Leinster will play in France. That's the situation for the semi-final. And then Connacht, after their win at the weekend, they have a home quarter-final against Gloucester, and then they would be away to the winners of Newcastle, Brive, and Ulster, as we know, are out after their defeat to Wasps. Brian O'Driscoll in studio, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Very well. From the glory of BT Sports behemoth studio to our little corner.
Yeah, it's
cozier here.
It is. It's roasting in the studio. It's freezing in that one. But yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's good to see that this studio is bringing a very relaxed environment to Off the Ball. As you strolled in with your cup of coffee on the count.
Yeah. So, I know you kept an eye on all of the games. In broad terms, two of the provinces through. Leinster outright favourites. There's one English side through, one Welsh, four French. This constitutes a very healthy state of affairs for Irish rugby after the doomsday scenario we thought we were heading into a few years ago.
Yeah, listen, that retrospectively we can look back on that as a bit of an anomaly. You know, we're more often than not in the mix, and I think so much has been made of that time that no Irish team qualified out. The fact of the matter is, you know, we've got four teams. You know, the English have 6 or 7. You know, likewise with France. So, you know, for them to only get for the English to only get one qualified is almost as big a deal as it was, you know, with our knockout, our no quarter finalists a couple of seasons back.
Yeah. What's going on there with the English teams? Is there a general trend?
I just think it hasn't been their year. I think you get that. It's just coincidental that lots of teams have lacked a bit of form. Been some disappointments. You know, Exeter should have managed to see their way through. They probably should have won in Dublin, and that would have been enough for them to have gotten through. Leicester were very disappointing on the whole, as have Northampton been. Wasps threw it away last weekend against Quins. They'll be absolutely kicking themselves because
21 points up.
21 points up, and then I think they were 28-12 up with 15 minutes to go. Yeah. That's pretty disgraceful to lose it.
Unprofessional is
it's just it's unacceptable, and they know it. So all the bad work from their perspective was done last week, and to see how close that they got, you know, finishing 9th ultimately.
So it could have been a very different picture very easily then from an English point of view.
But it would have been 1 for 1 because, you know, Saracens were the ones that finished 8th. Okay. So it was actually just would have been one team. But yeah, you know, it's one of those years that they'll look back and want to forget, except if Saracens go on and win the tournament.
We'll talk about Saracens Leinster for sure. Just a place to start, because time might come against us and we might not touch on it. Scarlets Toulon on the Saturday was a fantastic game. Obviously, I'm sure Munster fans would be curious about what you made of Toulon. But Tadhg Beirne, to say the least, was one of the standout players. This guy seems like he can kind of do everything.
Yeah, he's been brilliant for them. I was in the Leinster Academy with him years ago. He had a lot of injuries. Being brutally honest, I didn't see him become this sort of player, but he's obviously evolved himself. He's gotten fit. I think the Scarlets brand has absolutely helped him in his education as a player. And the way they play, the expansiveness has really suited his game. It's quite loose. You know, he's probably not the biggest second row in the world, but his work rate is exceptional. You know, against Bath, even the last 10 minutes, he must have made 5 or 6 tackles and a couple of carries, and he just has so many touches, positive touches in the game. He's an 80-minute man as well. He can play in the back row too. He's a different sort of number 8. He's not particularly quick, so and maybe not very explosive, but he's loose and has good hands and good skills. We saw him having a pick and go, making a break from his 22 at the weekend, and then putting a little educated kind of drop kick grubber through. Might have been an element of banana in it at the same time. I don't know. Only he knows that, whether it was intentional or not. But He just looks so good at the moment, and he is a phenomenal signing for Munster next year. Exactly what they need. Leinster will be sick to see that they've let that slip through their grasp, but I don't think he's one of those that has come good later in his into his mid-20s, where maybe you wouldn't have identified that level of talent coming through. He needed an evolution elsewhere to really bring his best out.
He's due a 10-day rest period now, actually, because he's been flogged a bit there. He's played a lot of games, he's racked up lots of minutes. I mean, he was very involved in their opening try, really nice hands, and then I don't know if it's the Josh van der Flier scrum cap effect, but at every breakdown, because he's got his blue hat on, Beirne, you seem to notice him, and he gets in there and he's a nuisance.
He's also incredibly good over the ball. If he doesn't pilfer ball, he's slowing it down. He doesn't give away many penalties. He's playing quite heads up. He listens to the referee. He just seems very educated with being able to see the game unfold and being able to read things a phase ahead, and
it's taking a lot of boxes. If by the if you take the Simon Zebo logic that he's not in the Irish squad because he's departing, if you flip that logic, should Tadhg Beirne be in the Irish squad because he's returning?
I don't see why Joe Schmidt wouldn't put him in now. Is he thinking he's happy with his second row combinations? Maybe, but you'd have to imagine on current form that he would definitely be in that mix for a spot in the 23. All of the Welsh players that have played in the Scarlets absolutely loved him as a player. Thought he was exceptionally good, really good guy, great teammate. So he added a huge amount to the Scarlets and continues to do so. You'd wonder why wait to the summer just to make a point of not selecting players away that are playing away from home.
He would be due back to the Scarlets in the rest weeks. Is that a very big deal?
Maybe not. But I also think you have to be aware that players go for different reasons. He hasn't done a Simon Zebo where he's gone, because a more lucrative offer has come his way or he wants to try something else out. He went that route because he wasn't being contracted in Ireland. He wasn't getting his opportunity. So you have to, sometimes when they do slip between the net, you have to eat humble pie and go, right, we lost that one. Let's get him back in. And I think on current form that he is very worthy of a spot possibly in the 23 right now.
Okay. What did you make of Toulon that night, given that Munster will host them in the quarterfinal?
They were good and bad. I don't think it's Toulon of 3-4 seasons ago. I think they were incredible. I think they're lacking a bit of glue. They're lacking a Wilkinson. They're lacking a Giddo. Bellew or below at 10 is a young guy. Still a couple of question marks around him. Tranduc came on and kicked a couple of goals, but he's in the winter of his career. So you kind of look at them. I wouldn't be as afraid of them as I would have been a few seasons back. But that said, they've got lots of seasoned campaigners that have gone to difficult places and won. So they won't be afraid. That's what you bring with you. When you're 3-time champions, you bring a comfort that you've had to get through some tough games in the past. Now, not lots of those three-time three-peat winners are still playing. There's a couple of guys that might have picked up one, but I don't know if there's anyone other than Fernandez Lowe that was around for all three of them. So maybe there's not the same sense of confidence as there was in that team. But when you look at on paper the firepower of Manonu in the centre and Radrada, the rugby league convert, those two were very effective in the last 20 minutes, caused a lot of problems. Ashton still scoring tries for fun, and they've got a pretty beefy pack as well. So they'll definitely cause Munster huge trouble. And I personally would have preferred to pick up La Rochelle in a quarter final than Toulon. La Rochelle's first season in Champions Cup. They've been really entertaining at home. Been reasonably good on the road too, but they're too loose to win this competition, in my opinion. At the moment, they try and play too much rugby, and I think against the better sides that'll cost you. So I would have. Interestingly,
Munster had that choice yesterday. I mean, if they didn't get the bonus point, then it would have been La Rochelle, and because of the nature of the delay, they would have known that at half time. I mean, you wonder, do they do a management team bother working through all that stuff?
You absolutely don't.
Okay.
You go and win your game, and if it's coming to you easily, and it eventually came pretty easily to Munster, you just have to go with the flow. You can't play contained. To send that message out to your players, just relax a bit. Don't go too hard on these guys. That is a very, very bad seed to be planting in anyone's head. About not giving your utmost.
If you make a breakthrough, just kick it out for touch. I mean,
how do you manage it? Kick it to that one went dead. Not to worry.
Fair enough. Munster's backline yesterday was Zebo, Conway Farrell, Rory Scannell, Keith Earls, who again was really, really good, and Murray and Keatley. So, like Tony Ward today in the Irish Independent was saying, I just don't see this Munster team going all the way. Like, that's about their best backline. That's what they're going to try and attack the rest of this tournament with. What are you making of them and Van Graan's early fingerprints on the team?
I like that backline. I think it's a great backline. I don't think that ultimately will be their undoing if they do get undone. I think they're right in the mix. Right. I think they've got a home quarter final. You'd fancy them in Thomond Park against any side, and that Toulon team, I would say Munster would be favourites. Okay. Yes, they have to go on the road then to France to win a semi-final, which is against either Racing or Clermont will be a tough ask, but not undoable. Clermont shaky at times. They've beaten Racing at home once this season. They were close to beating them in their home patch last week, so they wouldn't fear either of those, and then you get to a final, all bets are off. So that's simplifying things, but I look at potentially their undoing being their front five. I just don't know when you come against the really big packs and the really quality outfits, and even you look at the quality of Leinster's front five in comparison, with the two props, and Jack McGrath, or Cian Healy, Andrew Porter or Tadhg Furlong, the line-out option, Devon Toner, the steal of Fardy. I just think that's a great combination with a really in-form Sean Cronin. So I think that balance looks great. And you saw that with Saracens last year, Mako, Vincent Kosher, Duplessis it was, and then Itoje and Cruz in the second row with Jamie George at hooker. That they are meaty front five players, and they're the workhorses that generate the go forward and the fast ball for those outside backs. If you don't get that, you don't play with a whole lot of possession throughout the game. So I don't know, with Klein and Billy Holland and Scannell, with John Ryan and Cronin, or what's the name that got injured yesterday?
Archer.
No, the other
Ryan.
No, other loose head. Kilcoyne, thank you. Finally, I just don't know. Is that a front five that wins Europe?
Okay.
And they've got the back row for it, but do they have the front five?
Okay. And there's not much you can do as a coach or as a team to hide those deficiencies if another team want to expose them, is there?
No, listen, I don't. In the same breath, they're playing well, but it's fine playing at group stage with against that caliber player, but it steps up so much. Yes, to a degree at quarterfinal, and the quarterfinals now in the Champions Cup versus the Heineken Cup have become way more competitive. You often had one team sneak in that you didn't feel really warranted or merited being in a quarterfinal, whereas that's never the case anymore when you see the calibre of teams that have missed out. So the quarterfinals now in the new Champions Cup have become more competitive, and then the knock-on effect is same again semi-final, same again final, and it's the big physically dominant packs that set that platform for good halfbacks with threatening outside backs. It's a 15 team man combination, obviously, stating the obvious, but you look at Saracens and what they produced and the players they have last year, you need that again. I just don't know, do Munster have that in 1 to 15.
Okay, one last Munster point is Keith Earls, and it's an Irish point now as we head towards the Six Nations. He's 30 years old. He just seems like the last 18 months in particular, he's developed into this very confident, mature performer, and evolved beyond the guy who, it seemed, listening to certain players, was not taking what he was doing in training into the matches. Whereas now in the matches, you're seeing this guy who's delivering again and again and again.
Yeah, he's ripping it up. I've always been a huge Keith Earls fan. I saw that in training so often, and he's had a lot of misfortune with injuries, coming at bad times, and just when you get a run of form, he'd pick up something else. And he's had a couple of fairly long-term injuries as well, and out of sight, out of mind. And people forget about it. It's about building momentum in people's minds as well, and being a regular within the team. And he's got, I don't know how many caps exactly, 50 or 60 caps, but he's a game changer, and that's what I always liked about him. He's someone that if you need a score, if you get it to him with a bit of space, he can create it from nothing, from a standing start. And we've seen that over the last couple of weeks. He looked a bit stale, or not a bit stale. He looked like he'd very little rugby under his belt in the first 30, 40, 50 minutes of last week, and then he just exploded into form in the last 20 minutes. And he also is someone, he's super fit, but he waits for players to get tired, and that's why you see him having a big effect on games later on, because everyone else has gone through an hour's work, and he does that same work, but he just bides his time, and then that explosiveness and that speed in the last 20 minutes.
I hadn't noticed that.
No.
So so he will he won't use up the turbo.
No. I'm not saying he doesn't use it up, but he has that turbo he's an 80-minute turbo.
Okay.
So he's able to go. When everyone else is on 90% of their tank, he's still on 98, 99.
Okay.
For the last 20 minutes.
So you're not saying he's phoning it in for the first 60?
No, I certainly don't.
Okay.
I certainly don't.
So one presumes he's going to have a big Six Nations for sure. Leinster are through. Saracens came to Dublin last year against Munster, and Munster couldn't seem to land a glove on them. So Saracens have just got through by the skin of their teeth here. They're second in the Premiership. Where are they in comparison with the team? A lot of people would have watched beat Munster very comfortably and win this tournament.
I think when you're two times champions, you're there to be knocked. Everyone does an extra bit of analysis. Is the appetite and the hunger the same with each individual? You'd have to wonder. Human nature says no. It's very hard to stay motivated when you've won it a couple of times. That's why Toulon's 3 in a row, I think, is pretty remarkable, to stay that motivated and that consistent. And they've had a few hiccups along the way. They got beaten back to back by Claremont. They got thumped at home in Allianz Park by Claremont when no one saw that coming, in a rescheduled fixture from a Sunday to a Monday, almost behind closed doors. And then they went on this slump over Christmas. They lost 6 or 7 games in a row. They've stemmed the tide, and they've gotten a couple of wins, and they were very good at the weekend. Owen Farrell was back at his best. Mako Vunipola was playing really well. I just wonder, is there something in it where their Lions players that got put back in pretty quickly into the season, they got a bit stale and got a bit tired. That happens after Lions seasons, and when they had 6 of them as well. I
saw the stats. The English-based Lions players have racked up an unbelievable number of minutes in comparison with the Pro 14 Lions. So they're bound to be a bit wrecked.
That takes its toll. You just mental fatigue. Physically they might feel okay, but mentally you just can't be at the same level over a concerted period of time. You have to be able to peak and trough throughout a season and pick it up for big games. And the English teams will argue that every game for them is a big game. Premiership, is as high octane as Champions Cup, and that's where they have an issue with the Pro 14 teams. That they're able to take breaks and not put out their strongest teams. But
if styles make fights, how do Saracens shape up for Leinster?
Well, they don't. I wouldn't quite say they're pragmatic, but they don't play a huge amount of rugby from their own half. They've got a really good kicking game, particularly from Wigglesworth at 9. They're kind of that Joe Schmidt mould where their kick to regain is very good. Their percentage is very good. Their winger's good in the air. Big ball carriers, although they're going to be missing Billy Vunipola. Michael Rhodes, I think, is out with a pretty long hamstring issue. They had this new Tongan guy came in for his debut on number 8 and looked like a wrecking ball against Northampton, so it looked a bit like for like replacement there. You got Will Skelton sitting on the bench, who's a man mountain. So they've got big ball carriers, but they've got guys that have been there and know how to get it done. Brad Barrett's around the block a few times. Wiles pretty good on the wing. Liam Williams, very good finisher. Alex Good, really good at full back. Controls things really well. Gets in a first receiver where possible if they lose Farrell. So I think they've got a very effective team. They've done enough to get in, and they'll be delighted to be in the knockout stages. And teams that have won the competition the last 2 years won't fear going anywhere, but they'll know they have to really up their game against a Leinster team on the current form. If Leinster play like they're playing at the moment, it'll take a monumental performance from Saracens.
Okay. Leinster went to Montpellier and they won comfortably in the end, 23 points to 14. You mentioned actually earlier that La Rochelle were a bit too loose potentially, and that's why Munster might prefer to play La Rochelle over Toulon. Is James Lowe a bit too loose, or is the excellence making up for the defensive mistakes?
Yeah, he's new to the squad, and obviously he's enjoying the Stuart Lancaster offloading game. A lot. He's there's a lot of basketball passes going in and very effective ones. He's had a couple of bad defensive reads. Everyone throws the odd intercept pass. I wouldn't shoot him for that. So do you know what? He's still learning their system, but I think you can see that he's playing with a lot of confidence with ball in hand, and he's given license to go out and play that type of game, and he's really excelling. I think he's been refreshing.
He's the most exciting player on the pitch to watch.
Yeah, he is.
And at one point in the commentary, Shane Horgan was asked, does he have a free role, or is he just going where he likes and he's not meant to? Or it was kind of hard to work out. He's just all action. The mistakes don't seem to dent his confidence either.
Listen, it's a new combination as well. And you're playing on a wing, and he'll learn pretty quickly that one of the best defenders in Europe at the moment is defending inside him in Robbie Henshaw. I think he has been outstanding this season so far. His work rate is phenomenal. The amount of big men that he's having to take down. What he's willing to do is he'll do his job and a good bit of the winger's job, or a good bit of the next defender's job. He hunts and is really hungry to make life easier for you on the outside. And when he realises that he'll always have that aggressive hunt on the inside from him, James Lowe can always play out. He doesn't need to make those silly reads in, playing an umbrella defence, slamming the door shut. Where they're numbered down, you're going to get that push from Robbie Henshaw and use that touchline as your friend. So that'll take a couple of games for him to get going with, but he's in good company there. Okay,
so well then maybe not to put too fine a point on the Lowe conversation, but if Leo Cullen's thinking about the quarter-final where things get a bit more tense and it's knockout, you've got Lowe there. Scott Fardy absolutely 100% plays and is in the squad.
Yeah, I think he just brings a great steel to the team. He's workmanlike. He's not asked to carry the ball at all. Dev Toner does a bit of carrying, so he's hitting a lot of rucks, gets through a mountain of work. He scored a couple of tries even last weekend. I just think he's been really good, and Leinster teams have been very good when they've had a bit of steel in the second row, overseas steel, and Nathan Hines, Brad Thorne, Rocky Elsom obviously was in the back row, but I just think that balance is really good. Okay. Our overseas players with the internationals.
So if Fardy is in, then Leo Cullen and Stuart Lancaster have to weigh up Lowe versus Gibson Park, who also played at the weekend and did quite well.
He played very well.
So
too.
how do you that 2 into 3 don't go?
Yeah, I think what you do is you just wait for that time to come and see who's in a bit of form, and see if James Ryan's playing really well, if he's gotten a bit of joy during the Six Nations, whether his confidence is up, and then you look at the possibility of him potentially starting. But I think at the moment you'd imagine that Fardy and Lowe are the guys that are going to be in with Nasiwa, and or is Nasiwa even? He's not, because he's Fijian.
Yeah.
So it's just Fardy and Lowe, and you'd imagine that Nick McCarthy might fortuitously find himself a bench spot.
Yeah. Did your three Heineken Company teams? Did you go through six wins for 6?
No. I think we did 5.5.
5.5, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like the way they've done it.
I think Sarries were the first team to have ever won it.
Right.
I think they might have done it. They did it twice.
Okay.
Their last 2 wins have been 2 pool wins. Yeah, that was a big thing for years, that no side that won it. Yeah, Claremont had been pool winners 6 times, a couple of times, then lost in semis and finals. So yeah, there was point of reference that Sarries were the first team to do it.
Leinster have made it look very easy and routine, which is a big statement. The other last point from that game was that Jordan Larmour played, but on the wing. He had Nadolo running at him, which it just must be no fun. But I think I saw you tweet, did I, that if we're going to see Larmour for Ireland in the Six Nations, the most likely spot might be on the wing. How did he do?
I thought he was good, yeah. He didn't get that much opportunity with ball in hand, not like he would at full back, because the ball wasn't kicked down to him. He wasn't running onto it or catching with an open field in front of him, where he could use it. He was square to his target and utilise that footwork and making defenders look silly. I don't think the game properly fell for him in that way, but I thought the rest of his game was very solid. Unenviable task trying to take on Nadolo, but he did well. He jumped on his back a couple of times, waited for the cavalry to come, in Robbie Henshaw, and managed to get him down, and did his basics pretty well. So yeah, I do. I think it's a big ask to throw him in at fullback. It's the prospect is very exciting going forward, but I think he potentially could get exposed there, whereas I think you're less likely to be exposed on the wing, particularly if you've got a good voice in Rob Kearney at fullback, or you've got a good voice from Robbie Henshaw and Bundyaki or Gary Ringrose coming from 13. So I think there is more likelihood you might see him maybe a bench slot for the Italian game or something like that.
Okay. I know you were watching the Ulster game live for BT, so they're very much out. All the good work of the Quins doubleheader and beating La Rochelle at home out the window. Wasps kind of pummeled them. Even the scoreline wasn't good. What was it, 26-7, and it could have been worse for Ulster. They were lucky to get the try.
Well, yeah, it was almost an it was an intercept try.
Yes, closest thing to an own goal I think you would
Christian
see.
Wade threw a very loose pass.
No one can work out what's going on with Ulster. Like for weeks now, we've just been saying they're a very up and down team. They're unpredictable. It's hard to know what Ulster's going to turn up. Like, can you make sense of that dressing room, that management team, how it's all working together?
Do you know what? I've watched Ulster a lot this season, and I've struggled to really understand what way they're trying to play the game.
Okay.
What their shape is, what they're trying to do. Are they trying to have it loose? Are they trying to play a keep on going pattern? Are they trying to use short sides? They're a very, very difficult team to read. Now that might be genius, but it also seems like there's a lack of direction there.
So is it off the cuff stuff almost for them?
Yeah, I just feel as though they run out of ideas a bit after a couple of phases, after their launch, playoff, scrum or line out. If they don't make inroads, and the game is very simple. If you get advantage line and you get the opposition on their back foot, then you've got front foot to play with, and the passes out in front, teams are backing off. Whereas if you don't have the ball carriers to get you over the advantage line, and it becomes very static, then you've got to build that yourself. And and you need shape for that. You need deception. You need options off 9 and 10. And I just feel as though at times they're a bit helter-skelter. They go left and right and a bit of a zigzag pattern, which is the worst thing to do. If you want to build phase, you need to keep on going the same way, make the defence work around the far side of the ruck. Worst thing to do is hit right and then hit left and then come back right, because the defenders that made the initial tackles literally just stand up and are in position to make that tackle again.
Okay.
You need to keep teams working. You need to get defences working around the corner. And if they don't commit around the corner, then you've got space out wide. If they do, gives you opportunities to strike down the blind side. And I just feel, they were poor at the weekend. I think they would have been absolutely taken apart if the conditions were dry.
Right.
Wasps are a great launch team. And they still tried to play a bit, in fairness to them, and they got their bonus point. But Ulster's intensity in defence was poor. They made lots of unforced errors. It is a bit back to the drawing board.
Is it? Okay. That zigzag pattern that you talk about, and we have our fancy new tactics board, which we'll certainly make use of at some stage. So that sounds like a fairly basic thing. Like if we just keep zigzagging, then we're not making their defenders work very hard.
Yeah, no, it is. It is a basic concept. You know what? It's a zigzag pattern that you might use if you want to set up for a drop goal.
Okay.
It's something that you would go to.
Yeah.
But with regard to trying to build momentum, you can't go from one place to the next to the place where you've been before. You've got to you start using different channels and start tiring legs, because particularly players want to often take the easy option.
Sure.
And the easy option is to stand up and someone come charging at you again. If you have to work around the corner, the occasional player will go, someone else will do that, and that's when you get a mismatch, or that's where you get numbers up.
Opens. So then it would strike me that people like Les Kiss and Rory Best would be thinking to themselves, we're doing something very basically wrong here. And that's the mystery of this thing.
Yeah, listen, I'm not privy to what's going on there,
Sure.
and what conversations are being had, and whether they feel like they're lacking a bit of direction themselves. But that's what it looks like from the outside.
And their attitude has been questioned. Like some of the Christmas games, they were walking back behind malls and body language wasn't good. And then other nights it would look great. So it's been a bit up and down.
They produce too much. They produce too much at home, and then not on the road enough.
Okay,
and that has been, there's been a bit of history in that. That yes, Ravenhill has been Kingspan has been a very difficult place to go and win. They've had some huge European wins there. But you can have one of them, but you've got to back them up with away wins, and they haven't done that for a lot of years now. They did get to the final, obviously, in Twickenham in 2012 against ourselves, but their route in a semi-final, with respect, was Edinburgh as well. So I don't think you'll get too much of an easier route into a final than that.
Yeah, okay. 33 minutes gone between Swansea and Liverpool. Still 0-0. You can get a last text in if you want to ask Brian any questions, 53106. So Six Nations now is really on the horizon. The Irish team jetted off to Spain, south of Spain this morning, for a 5-day warm weather training camp, as opposed to the usual Carton House setup. Did you guys do that in your day? Ever go abroad?
Yeah, we did. We used to go to Club La Santa in Lanzarote.
Right.
That was more Christmas rather than pre Six Nations, but they were different times.
I would say they were. I don't think Joe's bringing the boys to Club La Santa for a knees up.
They got us out of Dublin or out of Ireland, to remove temptation, and they used to have a shop in the middle of where we were staying in Club La Santa, and lads would be bringing their full bags, empty bags, down to the shop, and you'd hear them walk back and clink, 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 clink. It's like big games of Monopoly while people got stuck in.
All right, okay. Well, I dare say that won't be happening across these 5 days. It seems like a perfectly sensible idea. Get out of Ireland, a bit of sun. It makes the grind at Carton House, which I would suspect is a grind.
Yeah, no matter what, it's plush, don't get me wrong. It's very plush, and they look after you extremely well, but repetition of anything can become a little bit monotonous, and you do need to freshen things up. And I think that's why it's important to send camps around different parts of the country as well. I suppose spread the love, but also to give a freshness to different players, particularly when you're driving up, whatever about the Dublin players, but having to drive from Belfast or from Galway or from Cork or Limerick, and that becomes a repetitive thing. Yeah, you just need to break that. Boredom might be a bit severe, but break that monotony.
Yeah, it makes sense. So they're off there for the next 5 days. Everyone's pretty much turned up in good health, Dave Kilcoyne aside, and Sean O'Brien aside. It seems, he's had a small procedure. It seems he's unlikely now to make Paris. So Stander and O'Mahony, who's joining that back row?
Joe Schmidt is a big fan of Geordie Murphy's, and I just wonder, might he potentially gazump Van der Fleer for the number 7 jersey? Geordie, obviously, he's decided to go up north, and he's played some brilliant stuff since he signed on over the Christmas period. He's been very good for Leinster. Obviously, with getting more opportunities with Rhys Ruddock's possible season finishing injury. So I think he's been really good. Joe has gone to Geordie a lot.
The New Zealand game, even.
Yeah.
What is it about Murphy he likes so much?
I don't know. I don't know the specifics of it. I think he under Joe, I think he plays a little bit more scared, as most players do, and I think he's always delivered for him. Not that Josh hasn't, but Geordie, I don't know what extra component he brings. I think there's nothing between the two of them. They're slightly different players. I think Josh runs better lines. He's probably a little bit better over the ball than Geordie, but Geordie can get through an awful lot of defensive work. But there's not really a whole lot between them, so it's hard to call between those two who'll get in. I suppose there's a big onus on training as well, who goes well at training and who looks as though they have a big appetite for it, so much of a muchness between those.
And one of them on the bench, presumably, then?
Yeah, probably, which might look a bit tough on someone like Jack Conan, or alternatively they might look for a big ball carrier like himself, and look at Pete as a potential 7 cover. I don't know. It's probably, it's better having Josh and Geordie as 7 and a replacement.
Right.
But yeah, it's not quite the embarrassment of riches that we would have had at other times. I mean, you have the likes of Jamie Heaslip and Reese, who was in really good form in those November internationals, out, and Shawnee likewise. But it's still pretty competitive. So,
where's Dan Levy in all that mix? By the way, is he hunting these guys down? Like long term, it's kind of barroom talk ultimately. But you look at Levy, Van der Flyer, and Josh Murphy; those 3 who've emerged at Leinster. I wonder in 10 years' time who's going to end up with the most caps.
Levy's injury before the November international was very unfortunate from a timing perspective. He'd been playing very well early on in the season. He's come on and he played well at the weekend again. He had a big impact on the Leinster Exeter game when he came off the bench and set up the try scoring pass to Luke McGrath. So there's a lot of talent there. There really is. It's hard to pick because whoever is in really good form, I think, is being selected, and Levy will likely miss out. I think he's going to be, for another couple of years, a potential also ran until the likes of Peter and CJ and those guys start getting into their early 30s and the bodies start wearing a little bit more. And Levy still has a couple of years to get right into the teeth of his career, 26, 27 when you're at your best.
Okay. There's obviously much Six Nations to come. So in short, you're thinking 2 Irish provinces in a semi-final?
Yeah, I do think so. Listen, Leinster will really have a tough. I think Munster will get the job done against Toulon, but it depends on who plays best in that Leinster Sarries game. It's the one opposition that I would not have liked to have picked up. But probably at the same time, better get Sarries in a quarter-final than semi-final or final, because they'll have gotten another bit of momentum, another bit of belief, and at home in front of your own crowd in the Aviva, 45, 50,000 people, versus in a neutral ground potentially, against someone that's as recently as last year got the job done. I prefer to have them in quarters.
Okay, Brian, thanks a million.
Cheers. Thanks a million for watching. If you want to subscribe, well, there's the button right there. If you want to see more videos, hit that down there.